Hi guys, Yuki here, back with Seduce Me Too, the Demon War, Diana's Route, Part 1. It's been a while since I've actually uploaded anything, we're probably almost 2 weeks now. I finally had a little bit of time to actually get to this, so I decided let's just go right into Diana's Route, and do, I guess, the alternate routes towards the end. And then after that, hopefully we can unlock the, roosters. The other routes and get the bloopers and find the true ending thing. You know, the angel password, but not really the angel password thing. But yeah, since, let's just get to it. And I'm starting from like the very, very beginning. So I don't think it'll be a really, since the other was only like 10 minutes, I thought let's just do that in this part too. That way you don't have to actually go back. I think it was only like that. But anyways, let's just continue now. I was in love with a succubus. It was true. I'd fallen for the charms of a succubus, and I was about to, yes, Rooster, we can hear you, to dive headfirst into the demon world with her to save her kingdom.
Do you have any regrets?
None. I smiled as Diana held me in her arms and carried us both through the night sky. We had shared a sweet kiss, the first of hopefully many in the future, and we were about to cast a spell to enter the demon world. Diana looked to the ground that was far below us and pointed her free hand down towards it, closing her eyes.
Revetara tenebras, lirato locum, pater portas.
At last, the words left her mouth. As the last words left her mouth, a large purple pentagram appeared in the grass before twisting and becoming a black void. I gripped onto Diana, scared at what I was seeing.
Last chance.
I gulped at the sight, not sure what to make of this. Was this really what I wanted to do? My curiosity, however, guided my decision and forced me to take a deep breath. I closed my eyes and let calm wash over me before looking up at Diana. Let's go. Diana smiled and wrapped both arms around me, laying a protective hand over my head.
Hang on.
I tightened my grip on Diana, obeying her command. As I held tight, I felt air quickly begin to rush past our bodies, as Diana tilted back and began to let us fall towards the ground. I mean, at least this time I'm not cursed. Was she insane? I looked at Diana, seeing her smirk at me before closing her eyes. I did the same, naturally preparing for an impact with the ground. What I felt was a cool rush of energy brushing over my skin, as if I had fallen into water. I slowly opened my eyes and found myself staring into a vast, dark space, holding on to a woman who was no longer wearing clothes. I was clinging to a woman who had no clothing, but instead had purple marks across her skin and horns adorning her head. However, I could tell that this one was still Diana, just by looking into her eyes. Diana smiled at me and kissed my forehead before tightening her hold on me and muttering softly,
Ad Lilith Castra.
To Lilith Castle. I held onto her body as I felt us begin to move through the space, as if a giant fan had pushed us forward. Onward we continued through the darkness, with me unsure where we were going and Diana guiding the way. We began slow, and soon a small light appeared, slowly growing as we got closer to it. I had to shut my eyes as it began to consume us. I felt weightless. I couldn't feel anything except the woman in my arms, and it felt somehow exquisite. I wanted to drown in this feeling, become lost in it. However, our journey through the light was coming to an end. The light around us faded away, and I soon found myself lying on Diana as she lay on the stone floor. The air, however, smelled of fire and blood. I looked up, seeing fire everywhere in sight. What the hell? This was the demon world?
Isager!
A loud shout forced me to look over and see a man running at me with a spear and rage-filled expression. I screamed and rolled off of Diana, scooting away to avoid being skewered. As he continued towards me, I screamed,
No!
I looked up to see Diana kneeling in front of me and gripping the man's spear, pointing it away from her. The man stared wide-eyed at Diana as she glared back.
My lady, you live?
Of course I do! I told you I would return, and thus I have!
The man gave a small sigh of relief, lowering his weapon and propping it up to lean against it. As I examined him now, he wasn't gunning for me. He was wounded and exhausted, panting heavily and gripping his spear tightly.
I'm so glad.
And then he passes out. As he finally toppled over, Diana gasped and rushed over, kneeling beside him.
Settle!
I rushed over as well, wanting to see what was going on. Who was he? Why did he attack me? Why was the room on fire?
Settle! What happened?
We were attacked by the Demon Lord. He took advantage of your absence.
I began to cough violently. We needed to get out of this room, wherever we were. Diana, we need to get out of here. Diana nodded and grabbed my hand and Sarah's, chanting under her breath. The room around us began to shift, and as if we were changing instead of us moving. Soon we were outside a castle, staring at its flames erupted from each window. What was happening? Diana's face was of pure shock, staring at the castle in absolute terror. All of the color, beside for the purple marks on her skin, had faded to a pale white in horror.
We drove them back, but the flames are too powerful.
At that moment, something in Diana's eyes changed. Her anger sparked, and she stood, quickly walking around us and towards the castle. Diana!
Come! I command thee, white winds! Crush these fires beneath your hands!
I stared as the wind in the air quickly began to pick up, and a purple glow began to surround Diana's body. It was like a storm was rushing towards us, but there was no rain or thunder, just wind. The winds forced back the flames that danced in the windows, and smoke began to rise from each one, signaling the death of the fire. The windows continued to be filled with wind and air, most likely to kill the flames deep within the walls. I might have seen this before, but since it's been like, 7 months now, I thought wind instigated fire more. I, however, could only stare at Diana. Her body was rigid and her gaze was intently focused on the stone castle. Soon, the winds began to die out. All that was left was smoke rising from the windows into the dark purple and black sky.
You did it. How?
I don't remember. Diana looked at Sarah, intensity still embedded in her eyes.
Where are the king and queen?
I heard Sarah's breath hitch, and I turned to look at him. He had a look of pure pain and guilt. What had happened? Diana walked over and stared down at him, now almost glaring daggers at him as she clenched her fists at her sides.
Speak, Sato!
The imp demons. While we were fighting the flames in the army, the imp demons snuck through our defenses.
My heart, despite not fully understanding the situation, began to tighten. Something was incredibly wrong. Sarah shut his eyes as a pair of demons, my soon-to-be allies, rushed over and began casting magic over his body, closing his wounds.
They snuck into their room.
Diana suddenly turned and bolted towards the castle, causing me to jump up. Diana! I began to sprint after her, following her inside the castle and trying to keep up with her. Her panicked breath kept me following her direction, despite her fast twists and turns through the ashy corridors.
No.
I could hear Diana sobbing, praying as she ran. I did my best to keep up, not wanting to lose her and not wanting her to be alone right now. We turned into a long hallway that had a pair of golden doors at the end. They were unscathed, as if the flames had not disturbed the door or perhaps the room behind it.
Please be alive! Please!
Diana bolted for the doors and began to pull them open, grunting at the weight. I stopped running, skidding forward from the abrupt stop. Whomever she wanted alive, I hope they were as well. As the doors finally opened, however, a foul stench of blood erupted from behind them, the scent filling my nostrils. Diana flung the doors wide open and could only stare at the sight we both saw. Blood. Blood covered the floors, the walls, the ceiling. The entire room was painted in gore, skin, bone, and massive amounts of blood. Only 3 things, barely coated in red, stood in the middle of the room on the ground. 2 broken crowns, and a small tiara that was barely large enough to fit a newborn's head.
No.
Diana slowly walked into the room, the blood on the ground painting her bare feet as she fell to her knees in front of the items, staring down at them. I couldn't bring myself to enter the room with her. I watched as she lifted them to her chest, curling her shoulders over herself and shaking almost violently.
Father. Mother. Audibel.
As she continued to grieve over the ornaments in her hand, a dark, almost deadly and evil-looking aura surrounded her body. It began to flicker and grow, like a dark flame that wanted to engulf the room she knelt in. As it reached an apex and began to violently flicker through the room around her, Diana arced back and screamed to the ceiling, her voice heavily laced with magic, pain, and rage.
I'll kill you!
Watching her body burn into the intense black and purple flame-like energy made my heart stop in fear. I had never seen her like this, and I was scared as to where her anger would drive her next. Oh no, I don't know what to do! I don't know what to do! I don't know what to do! I'm not prepared. I don't know. I don't know. It's been too long. Alright, here's to hoping for a good end. I don't think I should do anything. I wish I knew. Watch in silence. I kept my distance, giving her space to mourn and grieve. She had lost 3 people very close to her, and she came back to her castle in flames. She needed space and time. I waited until she finished, curling into herself and whimpered hoarsely. Diana.
Let's just go.
Diana and I left the room with her unable to turn around and look back. We walked through the ashy corridors from the castle, Diana silenced by the sight and by her own grief. My heart was heavy for her. Still, the demon lord who had done this was still a threat at large, and who knew when he would return? Diana led the way to a room which, as expected, was as burnt as could be. However, Diana waved her hand through the air, casting some sort of silent spell. Through some sort of prestidigitation, the ash and soot of the room vanished, and the furniture and decor were repaired. We at last stepped in, with Diana slowly lying down on the bed, unable to carry on any further. Looking at Diana's face, her eyes were puffy and red, while her skin almost became void of any color besides the taint of her demon marks. If she wasn't breathing, one would assume that she was dead. Diana stared at the ceiling, a world of emotion swimming in her eyes. Despite what had happened, at last she spoke.
I need to send you back.
What? Now was not the time to think about me, and I knew it. Besides, I came here for a reason. I wasn't going to go back knowing that Diana needed support. I had no regrets in coming here, and I would help her through this. No, Diana.
It's too dangerous here.
I don't care, Diana. Diana sat up slowly and looked to me, a form of weak anger in her eyes. However, she knew that it was fruitless to argue with me. After all, she made a deal with me, and I could see the obligation to obey buried behind her anger. Diana closed her eyes and lowered her head.
The Demon Lord will most likely return.
And we'll be ready for him. I gently took Diana's hand and lifted her chin so that she had to look at me. The anger that was plaguing her melted into sadness and broken hope as she stared back into my gaze. There were remnants of rogue tears adorning her face, and seeing her so scarred made me frown. I knew that we would get through this. We just needed to rest for now. We would deal with the issues this world brought after.
My lady?
Diana and I turned our heads to see Sarah by the open door, and I stepped away from Diana, giving her space. Behind him, multiple soldiers, servants, and other demons rushed down the hall, most likely to check for other issues and possibly trying to fix the damage on the castle.
Yes, Sarah?
Who is this human?
I'm sorry. Don't hate me. For a brief moment, I could see a look of disdain in his eyes as he looked at me. However, it only lasted a second as he looked to Diana, waiting for her to reply to him.
Sarah, this is my guest. She came back with me too.
Diana looked to me, trying to find the words in my eyes. What was I to her? My curiosity bubbled as I awaited the completion of her answer.
She came to aid me in this war.
Owie?
What of your fiancé? What of the other sons?
They are gone. They have disappeared into the human world, and I can no longer trace them. I have failed.
The guilt and grief in Diana's voice deepened, most likely reminding herself that she saw the result of failing moments ago. Sarah, however, stepped up to Diana and knelt in front of her, surprising me. What was he doing? He was a guard, first off. Why was he being so bold enough to step to her?
You didn't fail, my lady. The Demon Lord attacked us despite giving us his word that he would wait for you to return. He broke his end of the agreement.
I know.
Staring at Diana and Sarah, I could only see that they had a very close, deep connection. Was Sarah a friend, or was he something more? I could recognize the emotions within Sarah's eyes as he looked up at Diana. He looked to be in love with her, or at least had some form of ultimate care for his lady. Sarah gently took one of Diana's hands and placed his lips upon it. Instantly, I could almost see his energy flow from his body into hers from the kiss alone. Was this how energy transfer worked when you weren't the giver or receiver? The color in Diana's skin returned, and she let out a sigh with her body relaxing at last. Sarah, however, continued to keep his lips over her hand. Something in my gut irked me about him. I don't know. I'm sorry, Sarah. I don't want to lose you either. You seem like such a nice guy. Even though you did threaten me. I don't know. You guys should be together. I don't know. When you have no internet access and you can't spoil yourself. Clear your throat. Not that I was against Diana getting energy, but Sarah seemed to be extremely cozy with her, and being that she was someone who I potentially wished to be closer with, this is now an obstacle I had to slowly break Diana away from. I'm so terrible. I'm so selfish. Diana and Sarah both looked up to me, with Sarah lifting his head from Diana's hand. At least it worked. Realized what was going on, Diana looked to Sarah and smiled nervously before pulling her hand away from him.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sarah, however, stared at me, most likely knowing why I did what I had done. Another flash of disgust flashed in his eyes before he looked to Diana and bowed his head.
I am forever here to serve.
I'm sorry. Sarah stood and stepped back, looking to his mistress and to me.
Do we plan to retaliate, my lady?
We will. I expect the Demon Lord will come for a second attack, not realizing that I have returned.
What can we do then? Diana looked to me, a small glimmer of fear in her eyes, but her resolve rekindled as she let out a serious visage cover her expression.
I will meet him on the battlefield should he come again.
My lady, you've just returned!
That I have, but the Demon Lord will not care if he learns of my return. If anything, news of my return will spur him to attack sooner than later. I must be there and stop him.
Diana looked to Sarah with a cold expression, making Sarah stand up straight like the guard he was meant to be.
Tell everyone to mend their wounds and prepare for a second invasion tomorrow. I expect the Demon Lord will be ruthless enough to attack in the morning. Let everyone know as well that their princess has returned.
Sarah nodded and turned to the door to do his job. Before he exited the room, however, Diana called out one last thing to him which seemed to make him freeze.
And when you are done, please retire to my room. I will rest here for the night with my guest.
Oh, ouch.
As you wish, my lady.
I'm sorry. With that, Sarah left and closed the door behind him. The way Sarah answered Diana seemed forced, but I could understand why. After all, if he had feelings for her, I became an obstacle for him as I was with her. That didn't stop me, however, from wondering where I stood with Diana. She was going to stay here with me? This was my room? Diana let out a sigh and moved to the bed to rest against the back wall of the bed.
Come, we must rest.
I nodded and walked over, lying beside her. However, instead of Diana laying down, she guided my head to rest on her lap. You're not going to sleep?
Demons don't sleep, dear. At least not in this world.
Why not?
Because if we shut our eyes for too long, then we open ourselves up for someone to take advantage of us, or kill us when we're not aware.
I gulped, now worried and frightened to sleep. Diana chuckled, however, and petted my head.
You can sleep, however. I will be resting, but my eyes will remain open.
Can you truly rest like that?
Demons and humans are different, dear. Demons can function for years without needing to rest, as long as they continually feed on energy. However, demons can rest to stop spending energy. Thus why we have beds.
My curiosity began to peck at me again, but my exhaustion took control of my body. As I felt my eyes gradually shut, I could hear Diana whisper,
I hope that you don't mind me taking your energy as you sleep.
Oh, I guess that's fine. Before I let sleep consume me, I shook my head. It was all right. Diana needed as much energy as she could for whatever the Demon Lord had in mind. I felt almost a bit honored that she was taking energy from me, as odd as it was. At last, sleep consumed me. Despite what was happening around me, the world of sleep was peaceful and calm. For the moment, I could truly be at rest. At least, for a moment.
My sweet Isaiah.
Oh, come on. He's not bad. Huh? I looked down the darkness of my dream, trying to pin down the direction of Sarah's voice. Why was he in my dream? There was no reason why he should have been there. The sound of footsteps echoed in my head, causing me to grip over it and look around frantically. What was happening? At last, the light in the darkness opened to reveal it as an open door. Opening it was Sarah with a kind smile on his face, staring into the dark space. What? I looked past him, but he didn't seem to notice me as I stepped into the room and walked past me. I followed his walk and gasped at what he was walking towards. Now, illuminated by light, I took in the sight of Diana in a jail cell. On her hands and knees, weak and frail, she stared at the one approaching her.
Sarah, what is happening? Why am I...
Shh. Everything is just fine, my lady.
No. My heart stopped as I watched Sarah kneel in front of Diana and slid his hand between the bars to lift her chin. Diana seemed to nuzzle his hand softly and unconsciously making him chuckle.
Soon enough, I will destroy the Demon Lord and hand you the throne of the entire world. Everyone will bow to you as their queen and ruler, as they rightfully should.
Sarah, I don't understand.
You may not understand now, but you will in time. I promise.
Diana crawled closer to Sarah, wrapping her arms around the bars to keep her up.
Where is she? What happened to the human?
For a moment, Sarah stared at Diana, looking completely oblivious to what she meant. Hey, I'm right here! Despite knowing that I was seeing was a dream, I instinctively called out to Diana, hoping she would see me regardless. To my displeasure, she didn't, 'cause I'm dead.
Who are you talking about, my queen?
You know who, Sarah. She...
Sarah silenced Diana by gripping her chin hard, making her gasp and stare up in shock at him.
My lady, I don't know who you are talking about.
Diana whimpered in his hold in fright. Fear painted over Diana's expression as Sarah pressed his forehead against the bars to stare deep into her eyes. I felt myself rush at Sarah, trying to grab him, but my hands merely phased through his body like I was a ghost.
My lady, you must stay here for now.
Don't use your angel powers on her.
Why?
Diana's single word died out as she stared into Sarah's eyes. Something in her eyes began to shift from red to gold. However, her black pupils slowly morphed into glowing black crosses. What was Sarah doing?
Because I have not yet finished the Demon Lord, my love.
My love? Why this sudden change in name? I could only watch as Sarah leaned back with a grin.
Once I've finished this war, then you may come out and fulfill your destiny, with only me at your side.
Oh no, whoa! Staring at Diana, I watched as she began to shed tears, but they were not clear as water, but black as oil. On her chest, a black bird in the shape of a cross appeared, glowing with some sort of dark aura.
May those useless memories burn away. Remember only the one who has served you his entire life.
Oh, come on. Sarah! My words were futile, but I couldn't stand there in silence. However, as Diana's tears finally stopped, the stains on her cheeks drying along her skin, Sarah stared into Diana's eyes, burning a gaze into them.
Now, do you remember the human?
Who?
No, it couldn't be. The burn on her chest flashed a bright white aura before settling down, revealing the permanence it had over her skin. It was a real scar on her flesh, no longer a figment of magic. Sarah smiled lovingly at Diana before guiding her head forward and leaning in to kiss her between the bars. Diana closed her eyes and practically moaned against his lips, most likely feeling some sort of energy from it. However, Sarah pulled away gently and made Diana pant slightly in need. Was she that desperate for energy now?
Never mind, my love. Forget I said anything.
Sarah ran his fingers over Diana's cheeks, causing Diana to shudder at the touch and let out a pleasured sigh.
Now rest. Nothing will harm you in here.
Except you! Diana nodded before slowly laying to the side, letting her body slowly shift to slumber. With another chuckle, Sarah stood and turned around.
That human's life for a stone destiny. A perfect trait, if I do say so myself.
Not one of those other things again. We've already been through this with James. I snarled and rushed at him, but wound up running through his body and falling to the floor. Sarah walked back towards the open door and stood by it to look back at Diana with an almost evil-looking smile.
Nothing will keep us apart anymore, Isaiah.
I jumped up and ran at him, but as he stepped through the closed door, I found myself shooting up and out of bed to sit up, panting. I can't.
What? What's wrong?
I looked over to see Diana sitting in the same spot as she was when I fell asleep, and staring at me with wide, concerned eyes. There was no mark on her chest and no crosses in her eyes, which made me feel somewhat relieved. I looked around trying to see if Sarah was in the room, but he was nowhere to be found.
Are you all right?
Tell her. I had to tell her about the dream. I turned to her and took her hands, making Diana gasp and stare at me in even more confused shock. I had a dream last night. Sarah locked you in some sort of jail cell and wiped your memories of me, and I couldn't do anything.
Wait, stop. What?
Diana took one of the hands from mine and placed it on my head. Did she seriously not believe me? I glared as she stared at her hand. It's true.
I believe you, but I want to see it for myself.
Oh, okay then. I stared at her, now realized that she was taking energy from me from my forehead. Diana closed her eyes and remained silent for a moment. How would she react? As she pulled her hand away, she smiled at me.
It was a nightmare, dear. I'm sorry you had it. But I can assure you, no magic like what you saw exists, nor would Sarah ever do that to me.
I stared. I could see the genuine feeling behind her words, but something in my gut wouldn't let this go. How could she be so sure that magic like that didn't exist? What if Sarah was a terrible person? But what if...
Sarah has been with me ever since I was a child. I would know if he was a bad person. There's nothing to...
Suddenly the door to the room burst open, causing Diana and I to separate and stare at the intruder. It was a soldier who seemed to be a runner for the army, judging from his outfit.
Princess, the Demon Lord approaches!
Oh, okay then. Diana was right. The Demon Lord was going to show up today. I looked to the far window to see the sun barely up over the oddly colored purple sky. It was morning, as Diana expected. Diana quickly threw her legs over the side of the bed and stood, pointing to the guard.
Tell every able-bodied soldier to head for the gates. I will be there shortly.
Yes, Your Highness!
The soldier ran out, followed by a handful of soldiers that either accompanied him or were heading in the same direction. I looked to Diana, surprised to see her ready. How much energy did she take during the night? As I got a good look at her, something about her seemed to have changed, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
I have to thank you, you know.
Huh? For what? Diana turned to look at me with a smile. As she did, I could see a faint layer of purple energy surround her form and her eyes glowing a completely gold.
You gave me a large amount of energy last night.
Her voice echoed through the room, making me internally shudder. She sounded almost ethereal, and the power behind her voice almost drowned my senses. It was as if she were no longer a simple mortal, but a goddess. How much energy did she consume last night? As the energy and glow in her eyes faded away, Diana smiled. Diana gently took my hand and rushed with me out of the room, guiding me out of the castle, and around us, servants and soldiers rushed in one direction or another.
I need you there beside me when I face him. You won't be hurt, I promise.
I followed her step by step, nodding in reply. I felt a bit honored that she wanted me with her, but I shook off the excitement, knowing that I was walking towards. The Demon Lord was approaching, and we'd be face to face with it. Diana led me through the castle grounds and onto the battlements, overseeing the distance beyond the kingdom, where a large line of creatures lined up and outlined the horizon. I felt my heart stop as the tallest figure stood between them and us. Taller than any man I had ever witnessed was the man I was meeting for the first time, the Demon Lord. The mere sight of him sent fear down my spine, but this was the man who hurt Diana, so he wasn't my enemy.
City of Lilith, rejoice! You will fall before the sun reaches its peak!
Diana released my hand and stepped between the embrasures of the wall and walked through the air, following towards the ground like she were descending an invisible staircase. As she did, I jumped at the sound of the soldiers on the ground, pointing their weapon towards the oncoming army.
Risi masculum dintera, me facietua.
I don't know. Something about the ground and I don't know, making it some form to her liking. Diana's voice bellowed through the air, causing the line of creatures to step back in fear. As her feet touched the ground, the air seemed to pulse with energy. However, the Demon Lord stepped forward with a dark grin. Oh, you know what? I just realized this is at 80. No wonder it's so loud for me. Much better.
Succubus! You have returned. You have failed to bring my sons home, it seems.
Reme posteres maestri pictmae, nihil tibi dibio.
I don't know. The Demon Lord laughed at whatever Diana had shouted, making me worried for Diana. Would she be okay on her own? She stepped forward a couple of feet before pointing her palms towards the ground. Before my eyes, on Diana's back, the marks adorning her skin began to dance and weave before detaching themselves from her body and forming two large demonic wings. They flapped against the air in unison, causing a large gust of wind to push forward. Alright.
Soldiers of Lilith, come to my side if you wish to shed my enemy's blood.
As Diana spoke, the soldiers who had gathered at the front rushed forward and stood in two lines at Diana's side, pointing their weapons at the Demon Lord and his army. In number, Diana and her soldiers were outmatched 10 or 20-fold. However, something told me that the battle would be in Diana's favor. At my sides, a large line of archers positioned themselves and aimed at the army, ready to fire on command.
Steady, men!
I looked to the side to see Sarah walking down the line with his hand raised, waiting for a signal. However, the sight of him made me remember how he was in my nightmare. Could he be as evil as he was then? No, I think he's just misunderstood. We're kind of just in the way of his love of his life. I don't think he'd be corrupted, hopefully.
Patro verdis, astit covevo mimica.
From Diana, a large, thick tendril with a gigantic mouth began to quickly sprout and spill out from a magical circle floating above her chest, sliding around her body and down towards the ground. As I stared, I could recognize the shape of a mouth from when Diana first met me, when she dangled me over it before letting me make a deal with her. Soon, the tendril released itself from Diana's body and took physical form with purple and black scales. A head formed where its teeth was, convulsing with new moments as a wicked purple tongue lashed from its newly formed mouth. Gross. A giant 100-foot snake now stood between the Demon Lord's army and Diana's army. It hissed at the creatures in the front line and quickly began to slither forward in hunger. I didn't get a chance to watch it attack. I turned back to Diana to see her lift up off to the ground and form a purple saber in her hand, lifting it above her head.
For the pride of Lilith, to battle!
At her last word, Diana flew forward and slashing through the air, causing a large purple arc to shoot out of her saber and strike down a section of the Demon Lord's front line. I watched as both armies charged forward towards each other and began to clash swords. Beside me, a rain of arrows flew from the battlements down towards the incoming section of the Demon Lord's army, causing me to duck in case they returned fire. To my surprise and glee, the Demon Lord's army couldn't push Diana or her army back. They held their positions and cut down every enemy that came at them. The Demon Lord, watching instead of fighting, glared at Diana as she flew through the air, cutting down sections of the army with ease. The snake that Diana had summoned was dealing a major damage to the enemy as well, carving through the lines and devouring handfuls of them at a time. Each time it did, it either got bigger or became much more menacing. I could barely take it all in. The battle was merciless, seemingly endless. Diana's army was small but had strong morale, cutting through the Demon Lord's men with ease. The archers beside me continued raining arrows to the incoming soldiers, hoping to nickel and dime their numbers for the ground troops. I was glad that Diana wanted me there, but I knew that I wasn't ready to fight in a war, so I kept crouched to watch the battle safely. Eventually, Diana's army began to push back, forcing the enemy soldiers to either retreat or try to regain ground. Diana, however, decided it was time to deal with the real threat and swooped towards the Demon Lord. Both demons arced their weapons at each other, Diana with her saber and the Demon Lord with a giant sword, and clashed steel. As they did, purple flame and red lightning spasmed through the impact and pressed against each other in a battle of strength. The Demon Lord looked so much bigger than Diana, but somehow Diana matched his strength and did not budge in the parry.
How? You cannot be this strong!
You know nothing of true strength!
Some of the battling around the duel stopped, just from the sheer sight of Diana matching the Demon Lord's power.
I am the Princess of Lilith. I will defy your will and save this world from your tyranny once and for all!
A collective gasp echoed through the air as Diana somehow managed to push back against the Demon Lord, forcing him to step back in the berry. Diana was doing it! She was defeating him! But it's too soon! The Demon Lord slid his sword from the parry and swung at Diana, making her block, but failed to push her back. He repeated his attack twice, 3 times, but continued to be pushed back each time. The soldiers around them took in the moral inspiration and fought back tenfold, forcing the Demon Lord's army back over the arcing horizon. Diana and the Demon Lord, however, continued to clash swords, beating steel to steel. As the Demon Lord finally jumped back, he formed a large ball of red lightning in his hand, shooting it towards Diana like a flash of thunder. The attack impacted, sending Diana flying back, but with her wings. Diana managed to flip back to face the Demon Lord with ease. In retaliation, Diana formed a spiraling set of purple fireballs above her head and chucking them at the Demon Lord. With a glare, the Demon Lord slashed through each ball, forcing them to dissolve into the air.
Isaiah!
Diana glared hard in reply before flying at her opponent, slashing through the air with her saber. From there it became a battle of blades and close-range magic attacks. Neither side would give in, and no soldier dared to step in, afraid of being the victim of one of their attacks. The duel became blurred by the sheer speed passing between them, frantic and powered at once. It was slightly dizzying. Finally, the two slid away from each other. Diana was intact, breathing heavily from exerting so much energy, and the Demon Lord was weaponless. Just at my eyes, I could see that he was no longer carrying a weapon, and he was gripping his arm tightly to stop some wound from bleeding out.
How could this happen? How?
Diana didn't respond. She flew forward to engage him again, but stopped as the Demon Lord's body became overcome by red lightning. As if the lightning had ended him, the Demon Lord's body vanished. Coward!
I will return, and your kingdom will fall!
His voice, I can't speak, echoed through the air, haunting everyone and making the trees around us bend and sway at its might. However, as the voice died out, the army and the Demon Lord left behind vanished as well. It took a moment to take in. We had won the battle. We fought and drove the Demon Lord and his army out of the kingdom. We did it. Well, I didn't do anything. Seriously, what is with this we? I'm not doing anything since I kind of am useless sometimes. Quickly, the soldiers of Diana's army cheered huzzas for their victory. Diana's snake vanished at last, and Diana herself slowly began to fly back towards me. I was grinning ear to ear as she slid between the embrasures to me. And she passes out. However, I did not expect Diana's eyes to roll into the back of her head and for her to collapse against me. I wrapped my arms around Diana as she indeed fainted in my arms. Diana! Oh no!
Isaiah!
As I collapsed on my knees with Diana in my arms, Sarah rushed over and dropped to his knees beside us, taking one of Diana's hands. Diana, however, didn't react, even as energy began to flow from Sarah to Diana's hand. Leave this for another day. Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!